Welcome back to Locked On Women's Basketball. You are listening to episode 17 of our WNBA Retrospect series, a historical look back at the greatest draft prospects in league history. Today we'll discuss superstar Breanna Stewart. Before Stewart was a multi-time WNBA MVP. She won 4 straight national championships at UConn. We'll dive into our pre-draft scouting report on Stewart, her draft grade, and more. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Welcome. You are Ultimate Basketball. Thanks for joining us and making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. My name's Hunter Cruse. I'm your Saturday host covering the WNBA draft and prospect scouting. I'm joined by my co-host Lincoln Shafer. Lincoln is our biomechanics guru and covers the WNBA at the Next. Today's episode is brought to you by Dave. Download Dave today at dave.com/lockedonnba. You can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. Our conversation subject today is UConn's Breanna Stewart. I'll give the floor to you, Lincoln. What is your assessment on her as a draft prospect?
Stewie is insane at UConn. There's no other way that I can put it. She's basically, what if you took the best wing creator in a class and smashed her together with the best defensive big in the class? It's like the way that she moves at 6'4", 6'5" is ridiculous. The way that she handles the ball at 6'4", 6'5" is ridiculous. The way that she shoots at 6'4" is ridiculous. The way she moves into open space, the way that she defends basically 2 through 5 every single game whenever they need her, the way that she scores in every single play type that you can think of, and she's not a bad passer. I don't know what to say about Stewie as a prospect because it's whatever I say, I feel like I'm selling her short.
Yeah, just an elite defensive prospect. One thing that popped up the screen for me was just her ground coverage ability, her length. She can cover so much ground and help. Also, like you said, the versatility. You can pretty much throw her anywhere on the court, let her defend 1 through 5 with her length, footwork, coordination. She does literally everything with a basketball court.
Yeah, the only way that I could really contextualize this is just reading off her senior season stats. Because her senior season, she averaged 19 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, 4 assists per game, 3.5 blocks per game, and almost 2 steals per game on 62% from 2-point range, 43% from 3, and 83% from the free throw line. Like, if you don't know how to contextualize that, that's a great big mixed with the best perimeter player in a class. It's legitimately wild. The one thing that she doesn't really have in her bag, which I've noticed, is she doesn't really drive the ball very much. She likes to settle for these pull-up mid-range jumpers, but it kind of doesn't matter because she's so good at shooting pull-up mid-range jumpers. Her shot difficulty is really, really difficult, but it's like she makes them a lot.
And she went, worth noting, she went 151-5 in her college career, won 4 straight national championships. You don't see that often.
Four of those losses came in her freshman year. 3 of those games she didn't start. So as a starter, she only lost 2 games over a sample of 135 games, which is not all Breanna Stewart. We have to give our credit and props to Mariah Jefferson and Morgan Tuck, who were both incredible athletes and incredible prospects in their own right, and went number 2 and number 3 in this draft. But they're not the ones that have the accolades and awards page that's literally too long on my screen to take one picture of it. You have to scroll to cover all of Stewie's accolades. It's honestly ridiculous how decorated a college basketball player Breanna Stewart is.
And one thing we were talking about before we recorded with Stewie and with UConn is how good their college team was. Is if you threw their roster onto a WNBA court, they're probably a top 3 seed right now.
The 2015-16 UConn team is one of the best college teams of all time. It's the famous 111 wins consecutively, spanning from I don't even know the exact numbers, but they go 3 consecutive seasons without losing more than one game in a season. They win every game. It's insane. Stewie doesn't play more than 30 minutes per game her entire college career because they're winning by 30 all the time. That 15-16 season, they didn't have a game that was closer than 10 points. They won most of their games by 30. They won every NCAA tournament game by 30. Like, there's only so many things that I can say before it starts to feel a little bit unreal.
And with her game, one thing that you don't see a lot, there's maybe a couple prospects we talked about in the series where you can legitimately run pick and roll and also run pick and pop for them and actually have them as a creator. It's basically her, Lauren Jackson. There's only a few players that you can actually do this with.
Right.
If we're talking about team building, is there a better player in basketball to build your team around than Stewie right now? Or at least whenever she was coming out of the draft?
If you want to talk about just the number of ways that you can use her and the the ease of building around Breanna Stewart, maybe not. I'm probably taking Asia right now over Stewie.
Right now, yeah.
Right now, but like Stewie legitimately could play any position on the court. She can pass as a ball handler. She moves well enough to be a one and has a really smooth handle for a big. She can shoot like a 2 or a 3. She's shooting in college 36% from 3 on 3 attempts per game. She can defend the rim. She can guard ball handlers. She can switch literally 1 through 5. And she's blocking 11% of shots that opponents take around her, which she's putting up similar block numbers to Aaliyah Boston, while also stealing 2 shots a game, shooting 40% from 3, and scoring 20 points per game. It's ridiculous.
So after the break, we'll get into our scouting grade on Stewie. But first, let's talk about Dave. At one time or another, we all need a great or a little financial help. That's why Dave is great. Dave can get you cash when you need a hand between paychecks and can help you build credit by settling extra cash advances on time. Dave is the banking app that's leveling the financial playing field. When you download Dave, you can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. It's part of Dave's extra cash account. Advance the money you need with no interest, and then settle up later. Download Dave today at dave.com/lockedonnba. That's dave.com/lockedonnba. You can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. Download the Dave app now or go to dave.com/lockedonnba for terms and conditions. Go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking service provided by Evolve, member FDIC. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world, and it's important to be prepared. The J's case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can also customize your case and add additional life-saving medications based on your unique needs. Go to jacemedical.com and enter promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON at jasemedical.com. Welcome back. I'm your host, Hunter Cruse, and thanks for joining us. Let's get into our scouting grade on Stewie. But first, for those unfamiliar, we use a baseball-like 20/80 scouting scale. A 40 is your average WNBA contributor. A 45 is a top-end backup. 50 is your average starter. 55 is an above-average starter. 60 is an all-star caliber player. 70 is an all-WNBA caliber player. And then 80 is reserved for your perennial MVP candidates. Alternate to you, Lincoln. This is pretty simple.
Yeah, it's an 80. She's close to breaking the scale. Like I have a whole section of my notes that's just wow, this is wild. I don't she's very, very, very good.
And with Stewie, we're talking about, just to conceptualize, we're talking about one of the four best prospects ever. You can make a case higher, lower. We haven't really decided our exact ranking up to that point, but she's up there with the greatest prospects ever, with Candace, with Lauren Jackson, with even we're high on Caitlin Clark, Maya Moore, Asia Wilson. These are who we think are
Good
the greatest
company.
prospects ever. And for Stewie, just the most modern basketball player you can find. And that's what makes it so impressive, going back a little bit with what we saw with Lauren Jackson. Lauren Jackson was doing some similar stuff, but she was doing this in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And do you see any comparison there between prospects between those two?
A little bit. Of course, they have similar frames, and they both end up in Seattle. The number one comparison is that the smoothness flowing into being a very good jump shooter as a 6'4" big. I think I'd give LJ a slight edge on off-screen shooting, spot ups, and the like. I think she's a little bit better shooter and scorer, but Stewie is kind of in another world from LJ defensively, which is absolutely ridiculous to say. Like LJ is one of my favorite prospects that we've watched for this series, and like an all-around incredible player. But I think that Stewie is like a little bit better defensively and not quite as talented offensively, but very close.
She's just a good basketball player. At some point, like you said, it's hard to describe how good she is. It's similar with what we talked about with Asia and all these different prospects at the top. You're really nitpicking to find stuff that they aren't good at for their position. Like with Asia,
Yeah.
she pretty much does everything you're looking for in a center prospect. With Stewie, she does pretty much everything. Like the one concern you had was she takes too many pull-up jumpers, but
But she's really good at them. Yeah.
But she makes them. It's not like she's a 25% shooter on pull-up mid-range jumpers. She makes them. So there's that's really what you're talking about with these top prospects, where their concerns or their major improvement areas aren't really improvement areas
And
in the
that's what
sense,
makes them the
sense.
best prospects.
Right.
If
There's really
you're
no glare.
already if you're already really good, then you have with Stewie, it's not that she's just really good at a whole bunch of things. It's that she's so above average at everything.
Mhm.
I can't think of anything that I don't think that 2016 Breanna Stewart could do on a basketball court.
And let's just say Seattle got really lucky getting her, getting Jewel. They've had a ton of number one picks in their history.
Yeah. Yeah. And like the one thing that I did think was what would college Stewie look like without a very good point guard to set things up? Because she played every game of her college career with Mariah Jefferson, who is like taking away WNBA careers. She's one of the best college point guards of all time. She's a menace defensively. She's a really solid shot creator and a passer. But, we never got to see Stewie without an elite point guard. She played every year of her career up until 2023 with Sue Bird. Like, you can't really ask for much better than that in the modern WNBA. And then she moves to New York and is with Courtney Vandersloot. We've never seen Stewie in a situation where she doesn't have an elite point guard in college or in the WNBA, really.
Yeah, so after the break, we'll get into some more player comps. We'll also talk about her WNBA career. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily sports app. PrizePicks offers weekly promotions and that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select players up to 25%, even with even more value. PrizePicks now offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use promo code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match at prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. And we're back. Let's get into Stewie's WNBA career to this point. She's played 7 seasons so far in her career, 223 career games. The stats are pretty ridiculous. 20.8 points, 8.7 rebounds, 3.1 assists. She averages close to 3 stocks per game. She's also shooting 47% from the field, 37% from 3, and she's pretty efficient from the line as well. How would you describe how her career has transpired at this point compared to what you saw as a prospect?
I mean, it's about what you expect. She's one of the best players in the WNBA from the day that she sets foot on the court. She is remarkably consistent. She doesn't really have a bad season in the WNBA. And of course, we know she misses the entire 2019 season, the whole year with the Achilles injury she suffered in EuroLeague, which sucks. And since she came back, it's not quite the same player. I know that our usual co-host, likes to separate Stewie's career into pre-Achilles and post-Achilles, and that there's a slight difference. But still, she's still one of the best players in the world, even having lost a step. She is really good. I can't really find a way to compare her to any one player besides just saying Lauren Jackson-ish. But like, she's so good at everything, and everything that you see on the screen at UConn carries over into the WNBA. She is tremendously efficient. She's a defensive menace. She's now a 2-time MVP and a 2-time WNBA champ, 5-time All-Star, and just continues to rack up accolades at an enormous rate. She's pretty much consensus one of the 3 best players in the world.
Right. And what our coach M said was OKC Kevin Durant with more of an off-ball game. With Katie, we're talking about the same things, a bunch of tough mid-range jumpers, sometimes sacrificing rim attempts for those mid-range jumpers. Versatile defensive player, especially whenever he was younger. Good passer, just pretty much your ideal wing, forward, big, whatever you want to call these players, because they really don't have one position on the court.
I came up with one weird amalgamation where Breanna Stewart's kind of like if you took Cameron Brink and Maddie Siegrist and took all of their best aspects and shoved them together into one player, where you have insane mid-range shot making, a live dribble handle, a very good shooter and scorer, and maybe the best defensive player in the country. It's not perfect, but it's the closest that I'm going to get to what Stewie is as a basketball player. is just like, and that's two presumed top 5 picks in back-to-back drafts who are lacking on one end of the floor a little bit. That if you shove them together, even if you separate those pieces, they're still very good basketball players. But shoving them together creates this insane, just basketball genius.
Yeah, similar to what we talked about with Segrist when she was a prospect was the lack of turnovers, just polished decision making, and that's why she translates so well to the WNBA. Because some of these prospects we talked about in this series, there's maybe a step lower in the processing side. Maybe they're not impactful right away, but with Candace, with Asia, we're talking about some of these players where they immediately step in the WNBA and they're top 10 players, top 5 players almost. And that's why sometimes I wonder if the WNBA had a similar rule to the NBA. I wonder how that would change career trajectories. Like how productive could Stewie be if she came to the W out of her freshman year or out of her sophomore year?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, as a rookie, Stewie got a third place MVP vote and finished sixth, just in between prime Candace Parker and prime Angel McCaughtry. So she didn't really miss any steps. She averaged like 18, 9, and 3 as a rookie. She absolutely was good enough from age 19 to be a WNBA player. And I agree that she's probably like just racking up more stats in more 19, 9, and 3 seasons. It's an interesting thought. I think that there's very few players who would be these world beating WNBA players at 19 years old. It's rare. We've seen even very good players like Ezzy McGregor come from overseas at age 20, age 21, and struggle a little bit as in their first 2 years.
Right.
Who Ezzy McGregor, now one of the best defensive bigs in the WNBA, she's just it wasn't quite there for her the first 2 years, and now age 23, age 24, she's putting it together more. And we don't really see very often outside of like LJ and maybe coming up, our fam could be like a 20-year-old, 19-year-old in the WNBA. It's not something we have much of a lens to see. But I agree that Stewie is still a very good player in the WNBA at 18, 19.
And the players we do have that come in at that age are usually into the bench players. They're usually not getting major minutes. And that's
Yeah.
almost what I wonder, kind of get us off topic, but with Caitlin Clark, having her go back to college does no good to me for her development and just as a player, because she's way too good. Like if she goes back to college, she could come in as a rookie and probably finish top 5 in MVP, which is insane.
Yeah, that seems likely. It's I don't see any way that the rules are changing anytime soon, so it's not really something that I'm thinking
Right.
deeply about, but it's an interesting hypothetical, yeah.
All right. So thanks to Ultimate Basketball. First listen every day. Team back next week for continued coverage of NBA basketball as a whole. To recap, our scouting grade on Stewart was an 80. We view her as one of the 4 to 5 greatest prospects in WNBA history. But next, you can join us back on Saturday for a historical scouting report on Kelsey Plum and Sabrina Ionescu. Have a great rest of your weekend, everyone.